you, Mr. Chair and members, for allowing me to present this bill, AB 1302, and Manuela with the committee for working with my office on this very, very pivotal issue. AB 1302 streamlines and expands the ability for adult adoptees to access their original birth certificate by changing the process for how these vital records are accessed in California. The idea for this bill stems from a constituent who spoke of the hurdles that adopted persons face if their original birth records were sealed as a result of a closed adoption, a practice that was commonplace in previous decades but now represents as few as 5% of adoptions nationwide. As he put it, adult adoptees in a closed adoption have their original birth records sealed by a state law, and therefore they have no birth parent or extended family to ask about their family medical history. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown the need to be aware of one's underlying health issues and family medical history. I've also have a personal connection to this issue. As a father of 2 children who have had the opportunity of a continued relationship with their birth mothers, I can personally attest to the importance of being able to facilitate that relationship, an opportunity many individuals who adopted under closed adoption circumstances do not have under current law. Regardless of the reasons an adopted individual has for seeking their original birth certificate, they are often unable to attain this vital record due to a myriad of obstacles under California law. Currently, an original birth certificate may only be unsealed in the exceptional circumstances upon a petition to a superior court that demonstrates good cause. That's a pretty high burden. And if the solicitor has an unwarranted and potentially unattainable standard for many adopted individuals, it's subject to judicial discretion. I don't think that's very fair. Dozens of states in recent years have recognized the compelling interest of adopted individuals to access their birth certificates for medical and personal reasons, yet the very strict and limited avenues to reaching this information for California adoptees has remained unchanged since 1995. AB 1302 will remove the decision of whether to grant access to a petitioner's original birth certificate from the hands of the court. This bill will allow an adoptee, upon filing a verification petition, to access their long-form birth certificate with redactions based on a birth parent's disclosure preference. In order to ascertain the disclosure preference, this bill will establish a process to notify the birth parents. If the Office of Vital Records knows the birth parents are deceased, the court will forego the notification process and release the unredacted long-form birth certificate. This bill recognizes the long-standing need for adopted individuals to receive answers about their identity and balance the privacy of concerned birth parents, by facilitating a case-by-case approach that leaves the decision to release the original birth certificate between the 2 parties most directly impacted, rather than the discretion of a court that is unable to account for the lived experience of either party. I'm honored to have with me Lance Hastings to provide testimony. You may be familiar with Mr. Hastings as President and CEO of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, but he is here today in his capacity as a private citizen to speak about his own personal experience with this issue and the need for greater access to these vital records for adopted individuals.
Before the witness proceeds, I'd like to ask the clerk to please call the roll and establish a quorum.
Mainchin?
Here.
Asali? Connolly? Dixon?
Yes.
Here. Haney? Here. Calra? Here. Pacheco? Here. Pappen? Here. Pappen? Reyes? Here. Rivas? Sanchez?
Thank you. So we do have a quorum, and Mr. Hastings, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's going to be difficult to accomplish my intent in 2 minutes, but I'm going to make my level best effort to do so. In late 1964, a woman named Catherine Kleckstall lived in Minnesota, found out that she was pregnant with a child. She had an affair with a married man who had 3 children, so she had to leave the state to protect her family and the perception of her family. So she came out to California with her sister and her enlisted brother-in-law and came to Alameda, California. I was born on June 1st, 1965. I went home with my adopted parents on June 11th, 1965. So for 10 days, I was in the abyss. I do have a birth certificate in the county of Alameda, but I can't access it. I started my search to find my birth parents, or at least find out more about my birth parents, in 2005. And it was a very long process. I approached Alameda County, and I was able to get a lot of redacted information that was helpful in identifying who, not who, but how my birth parents came to be through the adoption report. But I could never access the birth certificate because at that time, the birth certificate would have identified my mother by name. I did a lot of searching, and through Ancestry.com and the Salvation Army, which ran the maternity home for unwed mothers where I was born, was able to help potentially identify my birth mother. And they did so, but unfortunately 6 months after she had passed away. So that search ended in 2011 when I learned that information. I joined Ancestry.com, and 7 years later, they were able to possibly identify who my birth father was through DNA testing, outside of all of the law, of course, and he remained in Minnesota. This March, when I was Googling his name, found out that he had passed away with zero contact with me. We don't know if he ever was aware of my existence, but we do know that Catherine Kluckstall was, because she delivered me on June 1st, 1965. I am Catherine Kluckstall's only child, and she'll never know and meet me through the process because of the hurdles that there needed to be a positive request from me at Alameda County asking for birth information, and then also the positive from her saying yes. I've met all of her siblings. I have met my 4 half-sisters that I never knew existed. And in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to be with them in Denver at one of their 60th birthday parties. The missing link in my life is that birth certificate. Catherine's sister told me that I was given a name, and my adoption report from Alameda County said I was given a name, but it was a name that's not disclosed in the the redacted report. The name I was given at birth is Dennis James, and that was her father's name and her brother's name. I'd like to see that, and if this legislation helps expose the desire of adult children, sadly they've both passed, so it should be a little bit easier now. I think it would open up a lot of opportunities. I apologize for the run over, but it's a deeply personal story. I have never shared this story publicly before. There are people that know me that have gone along the journey with me, but I was convinced that this journey was so important because when Ancestry.com located and identified my birth father, he lived in Minnesota in a town called Hastings, Minnesota. And I can't make that up. It's a very compelling journey that I've been on, and I appreciate the opportunity for Mr. Lackey to carry this legislation and for the committee to allow me to share my story today.
Thank you. Any other witnesses? No other main witnesses? Seeing none. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses, main witnesses in opposition?
Yes.
Yep, you may proceed.
Okay. My name is Nina Greeley. I am also a California-born adoptee, and I'm here with Joe Wood, who is co-counsel with me for Cal Open. California Open, and I've prepared a 2-minute statement. If I read it very fast, so I might go a little bit over 2 minutes, but I'm doing my best.
We'll give you a
today.
little over because I
Thank
gave
you.
him a little over.
Thank you very much. First of all, my heart goes out to Mr. Hastings because I know the same search myself. I was lucky enough to find my birth mother before she died, but not my birth father. California Open is a grassroots statewide movement consisting of adult adoptees, adoptive parents, birth parents, adoption agencies, and adoption professionals, and we respectfully oppose AB 1302. California adoptees have been seeking unrestricted access to our original birth certificates, or OBCs, the ones that are sealed, for over 20 years. We believe that denying adult adoptees access to their OBCs violates our right to be treated like any other citizen of the state. We believe allowing adult adoptees access to their own information does not violate birth parent privacy. First, for many reasons which we have listed in our submissions to this body, and I won't go into all of them, but most importantly, we don't think that birth parents have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the fact either that they gave birth or that they relinquished a child for adoption. Among those reasons are that birth certificates are not sealed at the time of relinquishment, but unless and until the child is adopted, they're out there. DNA databases are now ubiquitous. And pre-2002, the state of California actually sold the California Birth Index to the public on CD-ROMs. Moreover, granting access only to the adult adoptee and no one else is not the kind of egregious public dissemination of personal information that constitutes a violation of privacy rights, nor does it violate current societal norms. Finally, and most important, Whatever privacy rights birth parents may have, they should not be allowed to outweigh an adult citizen's fundamental right to know their own origins. 12 states have now passed laws granting adult adoptees unfettered access to their original birth certificates. No legal challenge to those laws has yet been successful. And to address briefly the oft-expressed concern that opening records will lead to an increase in abortions, in all of those 12 states that have opened records, they have experienced no such increases. So you may be wondering why. As advocates for adoptee rights, we are here opposing a bill that is trying to vindicate those rights. We deeply, deeply appreciate the author's attempt to address our concerns, but the unfortunate fact is that this bill, no matter how well-meaning, proposes a new, unwieldy process for access that requires complicated affirmative steps by the state and the birth parents, all outside the control of the adoptee. Not surprisingly, the only organization on record that supports this bill is an association of investigators who stand to profit from complicated and costly searches. Again, we commend and appreciate the author's intent, but the onerous mechanism of this bill does not meaningfully address adoptees' rights, and at the end of the day, it will simply reinforce our current status as second-class citizens. The real problem with this bill is that it once again enshrines the pernicious principle that the state and birth parents should have veto power over the right of California citizens to know who they are. So we respectfully request a no vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, I'll turn it to the committee. Any questions or comments from the committee? A motion from Ms. Dixon. Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Reyes. Ms. Reyes?
I really appreciate this. I have a number of friends, and we family too, who were adopted, this is very important. And I recognize the opposition. I've received many emails, and messages. So it's not so much against what is being provided, it's just saying it's not enough. And I think that every step that we take, we wish we could take bigger steps. I think we all have different bills where we would like to do even more, but to be able to take a step in the right direction, I think is a good thing. And because of that, I will be supporting it. I think that it would be appropriate, perhaps in the future, to have more legislation that opens this up even more, because there are adoptees who would like to have greater access, especially if the birth parents decide that they don't want to open it up. So I absolutely understand what you're saying. I think this is a step in the right direction, and I think that even if it's for some adoptees, that they will finally be able to have this opened up so that they can get the information. For me, it was a step in the right direction. But thank you for providing your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Haney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the author and the witnesses for trying to address a very serious issue. Learning about this issue as part of reviewing this bill, I was really surprised to hear how hard it is for adult adoptees to access their birth certificate. In fact, I found it shocking that was our current reality. And so I appreciate the work that was done to try to get us to a better place on it. I struggled with it because as I read about the issue, I found myself feeling that for an adult in our state to not have access to their original birth certificate feels to me like a fundamental violation of their human rights. It should be something that they have access to as a right. What I wanted to ask, and I appreciate the comments of Ms. Reyes, is why is this not a step forward? If through the chair I could ask the opposition, why, in the fact that this is trying to open up the access a bit more, why is this not at least a step forward for access?
Well, through the chair, the problem we have with this is that it doesn't. It is, even though there will probably be a few adoptees who do manage to get something through this, we believe that it doesn't fundamentally address the issue, which is that we are citizens of this state and we deserve our birth certificates just like any other citizen. And the problem is once you pass yet another law, we already have lots, I'm sure you all know, lots and lots of laws on the record already that are already in place that are constantly being brought up to us as examples of why we should not be able to get our birth certificates. But there's all this law. There's case law. There's the California Constitution. There's the Civil Code. There's the Health and Safety Code. There's the this code. There's that code. My God, it's been enshrined for this long. How can you say that we can, now go and violate birth parent rights? And what we are very concerned about is every single law that gets passed that does not acknowledge that we have a right to our own information is just another brick in the wall, as far as we're concerned. And it just makes it harder in the future for us to affect any change.
I appreciate that, and I appreciated the analysis and the chair's work to try to grapple with that. The other question I had, I know this bill deals differently in the retroactive sense and a proactive sense, and a question that I had for the author or someone who may be able to address this are for parents who gave a child for adoption in the past, were they told in some sort of legal sense that the birth certificate or their information would never be provided to the child? Is there a legal commitment that was given to those parents previously that they would then not have in our state moving forward? Is that why the difference is there, or is that just simply trying to grapple with what is fair? I'm wondering, is there a legal reason why we are dealing with it differently in terms of the commitment we've given to those parents?
Well, now, Joe, please step in, because Joe knows the statutes much better than I do. But it, first of all, depends on the timing. So that prior to the development of the consent registry in 1985, and the requirement that birth parents be told that they could have contact with or exchange information with their relinquished children, that would be those laws only apply to people who were adopted after 1985. Prior to 1985, no, there was no requirement for the state to offer birth parents privacy. The argument is that it was assumed, and so it was kind of an assumed promise by the state. But it's only since 1985 that the state has had to affirmatively say, by the way, if you give us your contact information, and later when your child is 21 and they want to contact you, if you say it's okay, we'll give you that information. So it gets very complicated because these laws were passed at different times. So I'm sorry.
If I may.
Well, hold on. Do you have did that answer your question, or do you have further?
No.
Do you need further
I
information?
just wanted
Mr.
to add
Haney?
one important
I
point to his
understand, but
question.
let him ask. He'll ask the question if he needs an answer from
Yes,
you. Do you need
quickly,
an answer?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. The point I would make, bringing the lawyer's perspective, is there was no promise prior to the 1985 thing being created, as you mentioned. After that time, I think you can fairly say there was an implied promise. They didn't say we'll keep it confidential, but they said if you don't want it confidential, then sign up here. So that does involve an implied promise.
Got it. Thank you, and again, thank you to the author. Again, I grappled with this and found myself more leaning towards where those other states have gone, and I appreciate the work that's being done, and continue to work on these issues as it likely moves forward today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kalra.
The way that it's written, it requires affirmative consent for adoptions before 2025, but then requires express refusal from either or both parents. So if one parent refuses, just their information will be redacted then? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then if an adoptee wanted to get unredacted, they would still have to go through litigation, I imagine, in order to do that, even subsequent to this bill being passed.
That's an unanswered question.
Was that?
That's an unanswered question.
Well, I imagine that since it falls short of what some folks in there's obviously different opinions, but what some folks in the adoption advocacy realm feel falls short, then it would still lead to litigation, because there will be folks that feel that they're not getting the complete original birth certificate. I guess I'm just talking here, not asking a question, but just talking it out, make sure I'm clear.
It's complicated.
Clear on what's before us, as opposed to, so there are some states that just allow for complete access?
There are 12 states that have changed their laws in the last 25 years, and the 2 states of Kansas and Alaska never had closed records. So, yeah.
And I want to thank Lance for sharing. It's very meaningful and deep for you to be able to share your story. But with this, you mentioned that through Ancestry.com, you learned all the information about who your birth parents were. But if this was the only manner in which someone could access their records, they wouldn't have found out. They wouldn't necessarily find out who both of their birth parents are. So do you feel that this is, I imagine you feel it's a step in the right direction, but do you feel it falls short of the access that you were able to gain by using technology?
But I had to reverse engineer the situation through technology that didn't exist when I started my search. So I was really poking around in the dark in early the 2000s. I've known my entire life I was adopted. My parents always shared that. They shared most of the circumstances about my existence, but not the particularity. And as I got older and wanted to learn more about my potential health history, as I had children, it became more important the older I got. And I realized the day I started my journey, it was a race against time. Because I wasn't born in 1985, and I just did some math and realized that they were getting older. And my birth mother passed away at 64, and my birth father passed away in March at 88.
Mm-hmm. But with the technology that exists now, it would seem that the technology that exists gives more access in a way than what this legislation would allow for, since it redacts information. So I'm just also kind of just grappling with this as to whether this is a step forward or not. With everyone's intentions, I believe, in the right place. It makes it a little bit more challenging to kind of to arrive at a conclusion on that. I don't think there's necessarily a right answer here, which is, oftentimes what we get faced with when we have to make these decisions. But I do believe that everyone's intentions in the right place. But not sure if this is a step forward or not. I'm just somewhat grappling with that.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Pappen.
I think I may have missed it. It is that if the birth parent, you make the request and one of them says no, it's unclear whether you could go to a court and still get relief, or you could, and try to override that declination, if you will.
That's a good question. I'm not a lawyer. You guys, most of you guys are.
I can answer that, ma'am.
Sure, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if one of the birth parents says no, then by statute you can't get it, and you're left with the necessitous, it's a medical emergency, or I can't get a passport grounds for petitioning a court. That's it. And as the honorable gentleman said earlier, that's a very high bar. Yeah.
That's the only criteria that would be allowed? A medical emergency, you need a passport?
The term is necessitous cause, which is way above good cause. And the way that's been interpreted by the courts is if you can show that you've got a strong medical reason to find out what your parents' medical history is, or if you need it in order to achieve some legal status, which is ordinarily getting a passport. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I really liked what Assemblymember Reyes contained within her comments, that this is really an emotionally fraught issue. And it's like laws getting in the way of what children and parents each may have separate desires. I think going one step at a time, we'll see how this goes. I also think that there's a safety valve in that this is a go forward. From January 1st, 2025, this law would be in effect. So going forward, a birth parent would know what the law says in terms of disclosure. So if I'm understanding that correctly, so until all births after January 1st, 2025, this new law would be effective. So anything up until that point, sadly, your records would not have been availed under this law, but it certainly serves notice that this new procedure would take effect, and it would be something that people can accommodate themselves to, in my belief. I will be supporting this, but I think it is fraught with a lot of unknown questions, but one step at a time, I think, is a good way to go.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments from the committee, thank you for your testimony. This is what's difficult about this committee sometimes, is that we're really in the weeds on this. It is hard. This is complicated. I think all of us understand that there's these sort of emotional issues that are at stake here, but how does the law apply to this, and how do we analyze? I mean, this is one of the more complicated issues that I think we've had so far this year from a legal standpoint. But that's what we get on this committee. It is what it is, and we're going to proceed today with this. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Lackey, you may close.
Yeah, even though there's been some points that are been well stated, and the complexity of this is why we probably have the morass that we have now. But I think what's inarguable is that the status quo is something that hundreds and thousands of adopted individuals that call our state home should not have to endure. And I think that this actually is a step, and an important step, in the right direction. It's long overdue that we recognize this issue and begin to implement solutions that respect the delicate and complex nature of the problem, and I would ask for your support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The motion is due pass to the Health Committee. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mainshine?
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Saley? Connolly? Aye. Connolly, aye. Dixon? Aye. Dixon, aye. Haney? Calra?
Not voting.
Pacheco? Aye. Pacheco, aye. Pappen? Aye. Pappen, aye. Reyes? Aye. Reyes, aye. Rivas? Sanchez?
Your bill is out.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.